with at least 2 brain functions, one of which is often memory loss. There's confusion, inability to remember people, names, impaired judgment or language, and changes in personality or social behavior. And the bottom line, when someone has dementia, is they are incapacitated to function independently on their own, whether it comes to activities of daily living, or to function in a social setting appropriately because of disinhibited behaviors and various other difficult behaviors that they display. So there are several kinds of dementia that exist, and Alzheimer's disease is the most common type. So common symptoms and signs of dementia are all things that I've mentioned previously, and you'll see them here in this slide. But a couple things I do want to mention on this slide that I didn't mention before are that people who have dementia, not only are they socially inappropriate, they have personality changes, paranoia, hallucinations, agitation, depression, and a lot of you who've possibly dealt with dementia before have probably seen this in your own lives. They'll accuse you of stealing. They'll accuse you of doing various things that obviously you're not doing. And when you're acting in their best interest, it's very hard to hear those things from them, even when you keep in mind that they're not in their right mind anymore. So dementia can be categorized a number of ways. You can categorize it based on common ground, such as what part of the brain is affected, and some dementias are named particularly for what parts of the brain they affect, like frontotemporal dementia. And then there's also, this is probably a more popular way to categorize dementia, as progressive versus reversible. Progressive means that it worsens over time. Usually there is no cure for progressive dementias, and reversible is just that. It reverses with treatment of whatever is the cause of the dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is a type of progressive dementia, and it is the most common dementia, not only across the board, but of course the most common dementia affecting the elderly. And it accounts for 60 to 80% of all dementias affecting seniors. So several types of progressive dementias include vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and Parkinson's dementia. There are others here that I mentioned, but I'm not really going to go over them as much as I will the ones that I just did mention, because those are the ones you'll commonly run across these days. In vascular dementia, the onset of symptoms for a stroke, for instance, that could cause vascular dementia are often sudden. And sudden onset of symptoms is also very much associated with heart attacks as well as strokes. Vascular dementia is progressive, and other forms of vascular dementia can be temporary as well, but most often if people have had either a major stroke or heart attack, or have had repetitive small strokes, or actually even big strokes, but have had a repetitiveness of the history of strokes, then they are much more likely to develop post-stroke dementia. And generally, vascular dementia, like Alzheimer's disease, is more common with age and often, as I mentioned before, coexists with Alzheimer's disease. One kind of dementia I do want to focus on is the one that's affiliated with Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease has received a lot of press lately, in large part because of celebrity endorsement of support and research from Michael J. Fox, for instance. But it is something that affects not only young folks like Michael J. Fox, but it affects a lot of elders and seniors who develop not only Parkinson's, but a dementia secondary to it. It affects 100 to 200 per 100,000 people over 40, with incidence increasing rapidly once someone turns 60 years old. The mean age of diagnosis is actually older. 70.5 years of age, or 70 and a half years of age is usually when people are diagnosed. In Huntington's disease, it's usually around 30 to 40 years of age. And there are 1 million cases in North America alone. The cardinal features of Parkinson's disease are resting tremor. There's a difference between resting tremor and intention tremor. Resting tremor is if I'm just shaking, just standing here. In intention tremor, someone does not shake until they actually physically go and do something. Like someone wants to reach for a piece of paper, they're fine until they reach for that piece of paper, and then that's when their tremor starts. So in Parkinson's disease, it's resting tremor. Bradykinesia means someone moves slowly. There's also rigidity. So you'll sort of see this cogwheeling robot-like movement in people that have Parkinson's disease. Locally, more than 10,000 people in San Joaquin County alone have Alzheimer's disease. There are 30,000 caregivers in the county, and these are not including the caregivers that actually work at facilities who do this for a living. And these 30,000 caregivers provide more than 34 million hours annually of unpaid care. So my hat is off to all of you to do this. Really, it's often a thankless job and an under-recognized job. So Alzheimer's disease, lifetime risk, the frequency, lifetime risk, is estimated to be 1 in 4 to 1 in 2. Every 68 seconds in this country alone, someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. By the time we get to 2050, it'll be every 33 seconds. About 12.5 up to more than 14% of individuals over 65 years of age have Alzheimer's disease. So that's about 1 in 8 seniors on the low end. By the time someone reaches 85 years of age, they will be the likelihood that they'll have Alzheimer's disease is 1 in 2. That's 50%. Mortality, it is the 6th leading cause of death overall. It is the 5th leading cause of death in people age 65 and over. And in several categories, if you clump cardiovascular diseases altogether, you clump cancer altogether, Alzheimer's can be the 3rd leading cause of death. And it's the only cause of death that has seen a 68% rise in the past several years compared to the other leading causes of death, which have dropped in incidence over the past several years. You know, there are some studies being done right now targeting insulin as a possible cause or risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and how insulin affects the brain. And so you are right, people need to be more cognizant of the kinds of food that they hand out, you know, at home or in facilities, for sure. But there are studies that have yet to really give us some good solid clinical evidence to determine exactly how much can or should be given. Okay, so I'm sorry, does that?
Yeah, well, I just think the studies are really, really slow because, I mean, you know, like we've got an obesity epidemic and, you know, how long does it take, you know, because what we're looking at is we're looking at preventative features that we're going to have to start a lot earlier, or we're going to have to like readdress our education system around our sugar needs.
Right.
And I mean, this is like a public health issue versus a pharmaceutical issue.
Sure.
Because you guys are going to make more money if you sell the drugs at the other end when people are sick. However, as far as I'm concerned, if 1 out of 2 people in their 80s is going to develop dementia, then we don't really want to give them anything that's going to form plaque if we know what forms plaque.
Right.
So I'm like,
you know, and this is one thing I was going to address later, but since you bring up the point now, I do want to point it out now. Once someone does have dementia, you know, these are all things that I'm talking about to help prevent dementia, and you know, for people who don't already have it. But in facilities where they do have dementia, there has to be something to be said for quality of life. And I tell my mother all the time, you know, you're only 75 now. You get to 85, you can do whatever the heck you want. You've earned it. You won't hear me say a darn thing. But you got to get to 85 first. And people who have dementia, you know, it's not their fault they have dementia a lot of the time, but they've, you know, at that point, they've earned the right to enjoy whatever they've got left. So if they want a cookie, give them a cookie. If it makes them happy, give them a cookie. I'm not saying throw them into diabetic coma, but recognize these people have this much to live and this much to know that they're living and be aware of it. Make that this much great for them.